Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. We're doing a live Q&A slash phone in if you'd like. So make sure you guys, why do I always do this? Why do I always do this? I always mess up the intro. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal live Q&A and phone in if you'd like. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel and get into the comments and let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. Um, Wasn't gonna do a show today, but just woke up and thought, you know what? Maybe, like it's a big game that we're leading up to, and I'm sure we still have more things that we probably want to talk about before the game. And also, Mikel Arteta has done his presser. So, yesterday we had kind of spoken about Saka being in the England squad. We also talked about the midfield that should start tomorrow, and I just figured, let's just go ahead and do it again, but only do it in like Q&A style. And so this is your show. You guys get to ask questions in the chat and I'll just go through them and start answering them. I think it's simple. A Q&A is what it is. And towards the end, last 30 minutes, if you guys want to actually call in, I have the link pinned in the comment section or in the chat. You guys can call in. There's no stress if you don't want to or you don't want to you want to ask a question, but you don't necessarily want to be on camera. No stress. Just get in the chat and let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. So no worries there. Let's see. What was I going to say? So some housekeeping. It's already rolling on the bottom of the screen here, but Femi is going to join us on Patreon for the post-match podcast and a rewatch if we decide to do one. So if you guys want to become a patron, you guys can. The link is in the description. If you guys cannot or you don't want to, no worries. There will be the live watch along that is going to start an hour before kickoff. So you guys know it's pre-match vibes. Pre-match vibes is essentially just us talking and reacting to the lineup. So that is like 90% of what being an Arsenal fan is reacting to the lineup. So make sure you guys show up for that, especially if you guys are going to go ahead and like watch the game on your own and you're not really going to participate in the watch along. You actually do get like an hour of pre-match content on the channel before the watch along actually starts. So make sure you guys join for that. That's actually already up on the channel. You guys can just go to the actual like channel where all the content is. If you go down to watch alongs, you can set your notification now for that. And then live player ratings immediately following the match, where we go through and just kind of talk, and then I go through the numbers really quickly because we just mostly want to talk after the game. So there you go. But that's enough for housekeeping. What else did I want to talk to you guys about before we get into the nitty gritty? Is anybody watching the Beckham documentary? I think it's so good. Like, and I wouldn't gas something if I don't actually think it's good, you guys. Like, I'm not that type of person. If I thought it was crap, I tell you guys. But I watched the first two episodes, the first two, like, yeah, little installments of it. And I absolutely love it. Like, anybody that knows me knows that I am a huge Victoria Beckham stan. When I was young, I loved the Spice Girls. Like, I even tried to have a group of my own in elementary school. And I was like, I'm posh, I'm posh, I'm posh. Like, I just loved her so much. And I thought she was beautiful. And as she like progressed through her career and left the Spice Girls and became a designer, when I was in fashion school, I actually did several different projects on her and talking about her like climb and how she changed her whole vibe from like being a Spice Girl into actually being like a legitimate designer that people actually rated. And so being able to see like Beckham, who is an insane superstar, and Victoria Beckham like do this documentary, and like it's so good. And like the football side of it, seeing Diego Simeone kind of talk about how he baited Beckham into getting that red card in 1998. I was like, yeah, this is so good. So it's like the perfect combination of what their life was like as pop, like kind of pop culture stars, and also the football side, which is really, really interesting because it's weird. I think people think Beckham was average. I really do think people think Beckham was average. Like, if you actually watched football back then, you realize that David Beckham was a star. Like, he was very, very good. He didn't just have like this cross on him. Like, I feel like people have demoted him almost to like Ward-Prowse, like, "Oh, he's good on dead balls." No. Beckham was that guy. He was so good. And so, yeah, like, I don't know if you guys are watching the documentary or not, but I've thoroughly enjoyed those first 2 episodes, and I can't wait to get back into them after we do the show because 'cause I'm obsessed. I love the 2 of them so much, like, they're bigger than any, superstar couple that we have in the US, like, Beyoncé and Jay-Z step aside, like, David Beckham and Victoria Beckham are that couple. They are it. Let's see what you guys are saying. Hugo popped in to say, "I'll have to miss this one, unfortunately, here to give a thumbs up and have a good day. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that." Hugo, Chosen One says, "Hey, Jess, hello to you as well." Errol says, "Evening, Jess. Good evening to you. It's morning here, but good evening to you." I'll name this account later, says, Hi, Jess. How are you? I am great. I had sushi last night with my best friend, and I woke up today, played with the dog, watched a little bit of David Beckham documentary, and now I'm here talking to you guys. So I'm having a great day, and I hope you are as well. Errol says, Jess, have we started talking about who plays goalie Sunday and does Saka start? We are going to get into all of that in just a second, my friend. Blaze says, hi, Jess. Hello to you as well. Mafia Boss says, big up, Jess. Big up to you as well. And Errol says Big Brother starts Sunday. I'm gonna keep it 100 with y'all. Like, I do not watch Big Brother. I kind of put Survivor, Big Brother, and The Bachelor all in the same category of like, I feel like the same people watch those shows, and like I just have never gotten into Big Brother. I don't really get it. Is it just people like in a house, um, and they fight with each other or something? Like, maybe I could get into it, but I'm more of like a, I don't know, like I like my Real Housewives, I like my Basketball Wives, like, I like that kinda trash. I like Love Is Blind, like, Married at First Sight, like, that's more a little bit of Love Island, like, I'm more there, but maybe I'll try Big Brother, and see if I actually like it when I get into it. So, enough of what you guys would call waffling, and let's go ahead and get into the vibes. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And if you guys want me to answer your question, it's easy, just drop the question in, but make sure I can see that it's a question, put like a Q in front of it, and I'll try to star them as I go through. Um, Nico asks, Jess, what are your Arsenal objectives for this season? And if the targets are not met, would you get rid of Arteta? This is a big question. I feel like so many people are asking about like, if Arteta doesn't win a trophy, what should happen and all this kind of stuff. And, at the beginning of the season, I said title challenge, win a domestic cup, and get to at least the quarterfinals in the Champions League. To me, I feel like that was pretty, fair, and also take into account that I realize that Manchester City exist. I think saying that we have to win the Premier League or the Champions League is a little bit like have to. We would love to, and we want to get as close to as we possibly can. But when you see, a team like Manchester City there and the lack of experience that we at least have in Europe, I think you have to respect that and realize that also this team for the first time is managing being having a lot of expectations in the league and also being expected to perform midweek. Our starters have not really done that since they've been at Arsenal. It's definitely been one game a week where they had to really like put their best foot forward, and like the squad would kind of manage the domestic cups in Europa League, and now we're playing Champions League matches and they have to start 3 games a week. So I've taken all of that into consideration, and the fact that like other teams also get to be good as well. So as much as I want to say that we have to win the Premier League, I just feel, you know, a title race is what I'm looking for. If and a title race means that you're within 1 or 2 points at the end, not you fall away in April and you're 10 points behind. I think we all know what a title race looks like, and you have to be definitely pushing the team in first really, really closely. So 1 or 2 points, if we don't win the Premier League, but then 1 or 2 points, a domestic cup, I just feel that this team needs to break that they haven't won a trophy as this group. Saka wasn't even really in the team yet under Mikel Arteta when we won the FA Cup. That was like a completely different side. And so even though that's something that you can't take away from Mikel Arteta, it's something that you can't necessarily attribute to this group. And so they need to win something. I think in order to like I wouldn't expect them to win the Premier League right off the bat, but winning an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup, I think would give them that like confidence that they can win silverware. And I think the longer you go without doing it, the more difficult it becomes. And so that's why the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup are just not competitions that I feel like we can afford to throw away because we're not good enough to just focus on the Premier League. We're not, so I think domestic cup, uh, title race, and then at least the quarters in the Champions League would be something that I would think is a good season. Um, Now, if for some reason we were unable to secure any sort of silverware, I do think you have to start looking at the manager a little bit. These are hard conversations to have just because there are a lot of people that are very, I think, adverse to any sort of like any sort of pressure being put on the manager to perform and do what he is there to do, which is to win. Of course, like rebuilding the club and us being in a feel good factor and making sure that we're in a good space in terms of like having players that are young and thriving and coaching them up and making them better and increasing their value. All those things are great, but in the end of the day, all you're really going to remember is how many trophies did we win under this manager. And so I think we're at a place now with Mikel Arteta after 4 seasons where we can kind of expect a little bit more from him. If he's going to be the guy, we have to have expectations to win. And so if he were not to be able to give us silverware this season, I do think you have to start looking at that position because I don't necessarily feel like I'm looking at a team that cannot win a trophy. I'm not. I'm looking at a side that I thought last season we could have won the Premier League, even without Saliba. I think if we had the right mentality and the manager had made the right decisions in terms of not playing holding and trusting Kivior or being more flexible in his tactics, maybe doing something a little bit different in midfield, um, just doing something to secure us a little bit more at the back and give the players confidence, we could have still won the Premier League, but we didn't. And so, do we have a team that's not good enough to win it? No. So if they're good enough to win it, then maybe it's the manager that ends up being the roadblock here. So I think you do have to look at the manager if we're not looking like winning silverware this season. There is, a a argument that you could say, what if he is within a point of Manchester City? We get to, a both domestic cup finals and we just miss out on penalties. But that's a very unique scenario. Most likely, what will happen is, we'll drop away from the title race and be more than a point or two away and go out of the cups earlier rounds. Like, that is the more likely scenario, and if that happens again this season, I do think you have to look at Mikel Arteta and see, um, if he's the right guy, and, I've seen people say things like, "Well, who are you gonna get to come in?" That's up to Edu. That's not my job. My job is not to be able to see whether or not there's another manager out there, but I also don't think you should just stay with a certain manager because you don't see anybody else, like, you see what I'm saying? So, it's an interesting we're in an interesting place. I do think we're on a fine edge, where we could see at the end of the season that Mikel Arteta is the guy, or we could be in a position where we feel like he's not it. I think we're on a fine line, and I don't think there's been any concrete evidence on either direction that he's not the guy or he is the guy. So we're still very much so in the phase of trying to figure that out. And I don't think necessarily rebuilding the club is enough to show that he is that guy, um, to take us back to where we deserve to be. And where we deserve to be is winning the Premier League, winning doubles, getting to at least the Champions League final. Like, Arsenal is not a top 4 side that nicks a domestic cup every 5 seasons. Like, that's not who Arsenal are. And so, and at this stage, we're not even really doing that, So, um, there's a ways to go there, but I hope that answers your question. Um, Let's see. I'll name this account later. Says, "Hi Jess, what made you get into football and start supporting Arsenal?" I used to play when I was younger. I started playing when I was 6 and I stopped playing after college. I went to Georgia State and I played for them. I got a scholarship and I started supporting Arsenal because I actually loved watching the game. Weirdly, no when I was growing up, like, no girls that played with me actually liked watching the game. I found that very strange. I'm like, "How can you love a game so much and love playing it, but not actually enjoy watching the best players that, you know, are are in the sport play?" I thought that that was strange. So, I would try to find, on the weekends, games to watch, and at that time in the US, you could only really watch, like, the MLS or the women were big at that time in 1999, that around that time, they had won the World Cup and stuff, and, so that's all you could really see, but obviously we knew there was something else out there, like, there was more out there, and so they actually started playing, like, certain games for the Premier League on American TV, and they would only play the biggest teams because they had the biggest reach, and at that stage, it was Manchester United and Arsenal, so the first game that I ever watched that was a Premier League game was actually a Manchester United game. And I was like it was Dwight York, Andy Cole, Roy Keane, that team. And I thought that they were great. I was like, "Oh, this team, this might be my team." Next weekend rolls around. My mom is like and my mom is the best. Like, she's the best. Like, anything that I'm really into, she's really into. And so she even became like a ref and everything to like just be immersed in the things that I'm really interested in. She's the best mom. And she was so excited one weekend and she was like, "Jess, you have to come see this. You have to come see this. There's this team. It's called Arsenal. They have this guy. His name is Thierry Henry. He's amazing. You have to watch them." We watched that game, and I kid you not, I knew from the moment that, like, the first 10 seconds that I was watching that team play, the way that they played, the players that were out there, this is my team. This is it. I love this coach. Um, I love Vieira. I love this Gilberto person. I love Sol Campbell. I love this Henri guy. I love this team. And that's how Arsenal became my team. Um, it was just, you just know, like, if you have the opportunity to choose your team, some people don't because it's just passed down within the family. Like, your dad is a Newcastle fan, you're a Newcastle fan. But if you have the opportunity to choose your club, you just kind of know when this is the team that's yours. I know people that have chosen Aston Villa, have chosen Everton, have chosen Man United, and it's always the same. You watch one game and you're like, "This is it for me. This is my team." And that's how I felt about Arsenal. It was basically love at first sight. I was like obsessed. It was insane. Like, I was like, "This is me." Like, I just love them. They're amazing. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Hopefully that answers your question. So yeah. C. Walter says, "I don't enjoy watching people that think they should be on TV." Fair enough. Yogesh says, "Do you think we need a defender before we go for Neto or Tony?" It depends on whether or not Timber is I think we need a defender, period. I'll say that. But in terms of, like, if we're going into the January transfer window, I think it depends on what shape our defenders are in, first and foremost. If we get another injury, then we are gonna need a defender. We're already thin enough as it is, I think, with Timber was supposed to cover so many different positions, and we were already trying Thomas Partey at right back. Like, I do think we're probably an injury away in defense from really being kind of like up shit creek. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that if we get to January and we're looking good and maybe Timber maybe could play at the end of the season, I'm not counting on it, but maybe if they think he can come back in March, then you go for Tony or Neto because if you can't score goals, you're not going to make the top 4. That's just the truth. Like, the formula for me to get into the top 4 is having a crazy attack. That's how you secure it. Score more goals, you get in. The way that you win the Premier League is to score more goals than everybody else and keep everybody else out. I think you can have more defensive errors making it into the top 4 than somebody that doesn't score enough goals. You have to score more. And so if we end up having a little bit of a dry spell because, Nketiah and Jesus aren't doing the business and we're not able to create enough chances, we're in trouble. not even from like a title race perspective, but of a top 4 race perspective. So, and I actually think every single window, summer window, you should look at your attack and add another forward, remove one, add one in, unless you have the perfect attack. And when I say the perfect attack, I mean you have Salah, Mane, and Firmino. You need to be looking at your forward line. You need to add someone. Um, and we decided not to do that in the summer. And for me, it's no surprise that we look a little stale. It's no surprise that we look a little blunt. Arsenal are already a team that doesn't have very many clinicians. Probably our most clinical forwards at this stage is probably Saka and Martinelli. And neither, like, Saka can't do it all on his own, and Martinelli is not there. So Arsenal need to add another forward in. That's for sure. So I would probably go for Neto or Tony in the January window. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, like, Arteta has been a little bit slow, I think, to add attacking pieces, and I think that is something that I've always admired about Klopp, is that no matter what's going on, he makes sure that his attack is going. I don't ever remember Liverpool being the type of team that could not absolutely work you. They may not be able to keep goals out. They may have, like, you know, dodgy Van Dijk back there, or, Joe Gomez chucking the ball into his own net. But what you do know is that you have to always defend them, and you're always kind of afraid because you have these crazy attackers coming at you all the time. And he's always refreshing that front line. Like, I think, he added Jota, even though he had, like, the best front three probably in the league. Then he adds Nunez, he adds Gakpo, he adds like, he keeps adding these other pieces that ask questions of the opposition. And one thing about Arteta is he's very much so trying to continue to add defenders, which is fine, but sometimes the best form of defense is having, like, a very, very, very vicious attack. And when you look at, Liverpool's front six, and I use Liverpool as an example because they have a similar they have similar resources to us in terms of an American owner that wants to have a self-sustaining model. They have 6 very dangerous attackers, and we're probably short 2. And so coming into this season without refreshing the front line, I think, and heavily relying upon somebody like Eddie and somebody that lacks, clinical finishing like Jesus, I think, was kind of dumb. Um, so yeah, like, we definitely need to look at the attack if we don't sustain another injury at the back. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Make sure you guys get your questions in. Like I said, this is Q&A. So the whole point is that you guys ask the questions that you've always wanted to ask, and then I respond, so two-way street. Let's see, we have some more questions here. CE, this is a good question. What do you think is required to beat Man City? I think Tomiyasu in at left back, Zinchenko and Rice in midfield. I hope Arteta doesn't start Partey from the beginning. So I think you have to, first and foremost, I think it's finding the balance between respecting them and understanding that they're better than you. Even at home, they're better than you, but also not respecting them so much that you're afraid to play, and setting yourself up in a way that's a little bit pragmatic. And taking your chances. I think that's just the main goal. They're going to have many chances. Maybe not many, but they're going to have chances. They're going to put you under some sort of pressure, and you have to be able to withstand that, not concede in the first 10 minutes of the game. You have to survive the first 20 minutes of the game. If you give up a goal, then game's pretty much done. So I think that, kind of like in the Community Shield, I thought we got the balance right. I think we were pragmatic. I think we respected Man City enough to play a team that was sturdy at the back. We had 4 really good defenders. We had Ben White, we had Timber, we had Gabriel, and we had Saliba, and we had Thomas Partey and Rice. And so we left it up to the attackers to really get us up the pitch, and we were maybe not our free flowing best, but we were able to create chances on the counterattack that we really should have had 2 goals in the first half. Kai Havertz had 2 sitters that he missed. And so I think it's key to set up pragmatic, respect them, understand that they're better than you. Do not try to go toe to toe with them. Like we're going to sit at the halfway line and try to possess and have Zinchenko running all over the pitch, trying to dictate. They're just going to nick it off of him and hit it into our right hand channel or left hand channel and put it in the back of the net. Be humble, but also be confident enough to play your game when you get the chance and be clinical. One of our biggest mistakes, our biggest problems when playing Manchester City is when we get the 1 or 2 opportunities, we get them every game. We have them every single game against them where we have 1 or 2 chances and we absolutely shit the bed. And then they turn around and they score a couple goals and it's over or we make a mistake. And so even at home last season, we were dominating possession. We looked pretty good. Tomiyasu chucks the ball in the back of our own net. But we had a couple of chances where I remember Eddie should have shot it earlier. We had a couple of decent chances, but you have to make those count. And so personally, for me, I do think it's a game for Tomiyasu. I think you have to go with a similar ideal as you did at the Community Shield, where 4 good defenders back there. Don't try to invert too much. They are going to clock that and definitely take advantage of that. If we have a big gap over there on Gabby's side, they're going to overload that side and make it really difficult for us and punish us. I would play Tomiyasu over there. And I know people are, how are we going to progress it? We need to be direct. Like, we need to be direct. I think we almost have to play like the away team. We need to find a way to get the goalkeeper to be direct, have an outlet, and play off of that outlet. That's how I think we should play. It's a shame that we're not going to have Martinelli because him playing off of the striker is probably our best bet, but you still have Gabriel Jesus. And so for me, it's a Tommy game, home and away. It's Tommy game against Manchester City. We're just never going to be able to go toe to toe with them playing the same type of football that they want to play and beat them. But you can be pragmatic and play a little bit more like the away team, even at home. If we have 30% possession, we have a better chance of winning than if we have 60%, in my opinion. So make sure you have an outlet. That's key because if they're putting you under pressure, you need to have a way to go long and get out. I think a lot of times we don't have a good enough outlet. Play with a double pivot or 2 DMs, however you want to call it. Play with 2 DMs and make sure you have 4 good defenders at the back. I think that's how the only way that you're going to win against Manchester City, because we cannot we cannot go toe to toe with them at this stage. That's where I kind of feel like we haven't been smart enough. Is the last couple of times we've tried to go toe to toe with them, but we just still don't have it, and don't lose. I think the key to not completely deflating the season is just don't lose. You want to beat them at home, but if you can't beat them, at least try to draw. I think a lot of times the game just ends up being a loss because we can't keep our composure. Just because they score a goal doesn't mean you have to give them 3. You can give them 1 and then try to nick it. We don't seem to be able to keep this fixture close enough for me and in the league. And a lot of that is just mental. So don't go toe to toe, be pragmatic, be humble, take your chances. Easier said than done, but that's kind of what I would like to see. Let's see. Nashville says Partey is going to right back when he is fit. I'm convinced Arteta sees his best box midfield as Partey, Rice, Havertz, and Odegaard. It's your funeral, buddy. Do not do it. It doesn't work. And it's just unnecessary. I feel like it's just trying to do something that doesn't necessarily work. But if he wants to try that, it's on him. I'll name this account later. Says, which position did you play when you were playing football? I was somebody that they gradually moved back. Like I played like when I was really young, like I played forward. And then from about high school and college, I played in midfield and also at right back. So I ended up we didn't really call it this back then at all, but I was a defensive midfielder. And I also played right back. So yeah, that's pretty much what I did. And I was not a nice player to play against. That's one thing about me. I was not nice to play against. I was no stranger to a yellow card. Um, I wasn't very nice to play against. Just the truth. Blaze says, Jess, it's true that Arteta wants Timber's brother in his position as midfield. I mean, all I saw from the report is that Quentin Timber has impressed several teams lately. He plays for Feyenoord, and um, he has impressed Liverpool, Manchester United, and Arsenal. So I think making Arsenal the headline is also, because we already have Timber, Jurriën Timber, but he looks like a really good player. Like, I don't know if it has legs to it. I'd be surprised if Arteta like bought a normal midfielder, but I would not be opposed for the vibes. I think, he could be a good player. I don't know. Um, it just says that he's impressed. I don't know if there's any legs to it in terms of like, we're going to go out there and get him. But looking at some of his stats here, like, I mean, his pass completion and passes attempted and progressive passes are not at the top, but his progressive carries, his successful take-ons, his touches in the attacking penalty box, and progressive passes received is quite high. So I'm thinking it's a little bit more attacking, and he's probably, like Timber, very good on the ball and is a good ball progressor and a good carrier of the ball. That's what I'm seeing here, and he's, very high in the stats in terms of like assists and goals and stuff like that. So it says he has 1 goal and 3 assists in 7 matches. Um, I think he plays for like the under 21s too, as of now. Like, he's the captain of the under 21 Netherlands team. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look a little bit more into it. I feel like I just want Timber back, and so I'll take any version of Timber, even if it's Quentin. But I'm sure he's a good player. Like, if he's anything like his brother, I'm sure he's a good player. Is he the perfect player for us? Who knows? But there was a player that I really thought would have been really good for us, um, that I'm really devastated that we did not go ahead and get. Like, there was a report that had come out during the summer when we were when they're talking about who's gonna replace Granit Xhaka, and it was Orkun Kochu, and he ended up going to Benfica, and he's a fantastic player. I think he also played for, Feyenoord, I think, as well, and it's just I'm kind of upset that we missed out on him. Just on a side note, because he just felt like the right choice for a left center mid, especially one that, you wanted like a high volume passer, tempo controller. Like, he definitely had the vibes. But in terms of Quentin, I need to watch a little bit more of him. But I'm sure a lot of people would take him just because he's a Timber, you know. Um, so yeah, let's see. Let's see. Um, mm, mm, mm. um Coach Dave says, if you could choose Arsenal's next manager, who would that manager be? I mean, at this stage, I think you have to choose like somebody that has, I don't know, has like won something before. I think another project manager would be um not the right. I think it'd be kind of like spinning the hamster wheel and kind of like doing the same thing again. But the problem is like a lot of those managers don't really exist. Like, there's just Pep and Klopp and like a couple others. But even what we've seen like with Tuchel or Luis Enrique, these guys that people highly rate that have won things before, haven't really hit the ground running with the teams that they have now with good resources as well. So I'm not sure who that person is, but like, um, it has to be somebody that's won things before. I think that's the next step. You could say somebody like Zinedine Zidane, but can I see him at London Colony? Not really. Um, But I don't know. I don't know who the manager could be. People say Ancelotti. I'm like, does he really have the stamina to do Arsenal now? Like, he seems like he kind of just wants to step into something where it's like it's already ready to go. We are kind of ready to go, but like, it's still a little bit like a work in progress. So I'm not sure. It's a difficult one because you need a winner. And there's a lot of guys out there that people say are winners because they've won things at big clubs before. but they've gone on to other clubs and really struggled, and I wonder if they would struggle at Arsenal, because Arsenal are like a club that needs somebody with a strong mentality, because we haven't won the Premier League in a long time, and the longer you don't win something, like I said before, the more difficult it becomes. So breaking that mental barrier from a club perspective would be really difficult. So it's not like walking into Real Madrid and they just won things before, like a day ago. It's gonna be tougher than that. So it's tough to say. What I would say, like, just in general, I wouldn't want somebody else that's a project, or somebody that hasn't won anything before. So no Xavi Alonso, no De Zerbi, none of these, because I feel like, they're just as big of a risk as Arteta, because they haven't been at a big club with a lot of pressure before. But do you go for the old dinosaur? Do you go for the old dinosaur? You know, I don't know. So it's a tough one. For me, it's a tough one. But no more projects, that's for sure. Yo-Yo asks your top 5 Arsenal players of past and top 5 non-Arsenal men or women. Top 5 Arsenal players of the past. Ooh, that's tough. Um, some oldie but goodies for sure. Vieira has to be in there for sure. Robert Pires is definitely in there. I can only choose 5, so some big ones are not gonna be in there. But, Vieira, because obviously, like, the position I used to play and stuff like that, like, I wanted to be him badly. Robert Pires, he was just, I think, underrated and very good and fun to watch. Um, Santi, he's definitely in there for me. Maybe as, like, a hipster choice, but he's in there. I think you gotta throw Thierry in there. Um, It's hard. How many more do I have? Cesc. I know it's like he's a snake and all that, but like that guy was the business. Um, and if I have to go for one more, um, I would say Alex Scott maybe too. Like the women's perspective, like she was that girl and she was really good for us and she won everything at Arsenal. So I'll go with those. And top 5 non-Arsenal, gotta be Ronaldinho. Um, Gotta be I really was like a huge fan of Michael Essien. I thought he was the perfect midfielder. And I was really jealous that Chelsea had him. Again, I have like a big affinity towards like DMs, like defensive midfielders. So Ronaldinho, a weird like out of left field would probably be Essien. Um, Tobin Heath from the US women's national team. She's always been a favorite player of mine. Um, let's see. Fat Ronaldo. Definitely gotta get Fat Ronaldo in there. Um, there's so many. There's so many. Um, I just realized that I didn't put Bergkamp in the other one. So Marta. Marta, another women's player, probably one of the best. Um, that's gotta be like 5. So Fat Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Michael Essien, Tobin Heath, Marta. I'll I don't know, you guys. That's probably 5. It's hard, you only gave me 5. You only gave me 5. Um, you only gave me 5. I need more. I need more. I'll think of more while 'cause people will pop into my head, but I loved Ronaldinho. He could do nothing wrong. Like, I had a really big hate towards Pep for a long time, because he got rid of Ronaldinho. I was like, how dare you? Like, how dare you get rid of Ronaldinho? Like, you are crazy. And I just, when I think about a player that gives you just like joy, it's Ronaldinho. Like when I took like my favorite player, like he's way out in front. He is way out in front, like to the point where when Arsenal would play Barcelona, watching Ronaldinho play against Arsenal was very hard for me because I would be like, I want you to win, but I also want my team to win. So, yeah, Ronaldinho is by far my favorite player of all time. Like nobody comes close. Um, I don't care. Like he was just amazing. And then I have some other ones like I said that I really like. Like Fat Ronaldo, I really like. Fat Ronaldo's the shit, man. And I also like have an affinity towards Brazilian players. So as you guys like Ronaldinho, Fat Ronaldo, Marta, Brazilian players for me. Let's see. Chosen One says, "Do you think sometimes to beat a team like Man City, it comes down to individual brilliance? They're such a well-oiled machine that you need a good team, but how often can you have as good of a team as Man City?" Yeah, I think um, we have a couple of players that I do think have the ability to have a little bit of individual brilliance in them, to make something happen out of nothing. And they're probably the two players that may or may not like. We know Martinelli probably won't play, and Saka's the other one. I think they're the ones that when they're at their best, they can kind of make something out of nothing or, really change the game. And I do think that like we need a little bit more of that, like just individual players that one, I think what scares people about our team is more the system and how well coached we are and how our patterns are so like automatic that they're hard to stop. But if I would say, like, if I was an opposition coach and I'm looking at Arsenal, I'm more afraid of that than the individuals in the team, except for maybe Saka, and Martinelli. Those are the two players that I'd be like, you really have to stop these guys because they are different. But Arsenal do need a little bit of individual brilliance in their team. I do think they need something special. Like, um, it would be nice to have a midfielder like Cesc in the team that can kind of make something out of nothing, or, the type of striker in the team that just scares the living daylights out of center backs. Like, we don't really have those two sorted out yet. So yeah, we lack a little bit of individual brilliance, and that might be a reason why we can't seem to really get over the line against somebody like Manchester City. Because you're right, our system like against theirs is never going to beat them. It's never going to. So sometimes you do need individuals. And we're not quite there yet. T Yep says, "What would be your preferred starting lineup against City?" Raya, White, Gabrielle, Saliba, Tommy. As much as I probably regret it, Partey, Rice, Odegaard, Trossard, Jesus, and Havertz. That's what I would go with. Um, That's what I would go with. Um, Basically, what we started with at the Community Shield, but different wingers and no Timber. Basically that. Basically that. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Yo-Yo says, "I want to see a wall of center backs in front of Rhea rather than win the game in the second half, then lose it in the first half." I like that. I really like that. Um, I like that because if you lose it in the first half, like that's it, and if you have to keep it 0-0 and then nick it at the end, I'm saying like we have to be pragmatic. We're never going to like we're just not at the stage where we can go toe to toe and be open and play our style. Like we're just not good enough. Demetrio says, "Sorry, I messed up the question from before, but what about Kubo instead of Neto and go for Tony this January, then get a loan with navigation for Lino?" So um I love Kubo, and I think, like, if we got him and we didn't get Neto, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I think he's sensational. Like, watching him play is so fun, and he does all the things that Pedro Neto does. If you look at their statistically, what they offer is quite similar, and so you wouldn't be, in a bad position if you got Kubo. I feel like people really want Neto because they've seen him in the Premier League, and maybe has a little bit more of, like, that raw, like, directness, but I really do like, Kubo, and I would take him too. In terms of, maybe like get Tony and get a loan. I don't know. Are you saying get a loan, with an obligation for who's Lino? Like Lino Sousa? Um, who are we getting a loan with an obligation for? Is that for Tony? Um, but we're not gonna be able to loan either one of Neto or Tony. So we're gonna have to come up with the coins. But yeah, I like Kubo. I like his celebration too. That sold it for me. That sold it for me. I was like, yeah, we need to get him. Um, the Wheel of Also says Santi Jimenez and Timbers Bros, hear me out. Um, I haven't watched anything about that Jimenez. Like I said, I saw that we were linked with him, but I didn't really look into it that much. I don't know. Like I feel like yeah, I don't know why I didn't feel like that link was real, to the Jimenez guy, but we'll see. We're gonna need more than one option for the center forward position, I think, in terms of, like, recruitment. Um, yeah, yeah. It can't just be Tony. It can't just be Tony. We need to look at some others. Yo-Yo says, "I really wanted Luis Enrique, but his time away from club football has dulled his senses." Doesn't look great, does it? I mean, I think, obviously, like, Newcastle, the environment, the way that they played, they were well prepared and played exceptionally well against, PSG. But I think, like, the way that PSG went into that game, I don't feel like they respected Newcastle at all, and I didn't like the way that they went in there with, like, this weird 4-4-2, with Kolo Muani and Ramos up front, and then, like, Mbappe and Dembele and, like, these weird wide roles. I was like, "What the F are you playing at? Like, this doesn't make any sense." Seeing the lineup, I was like everybody was like, "Ooh, look at all this attack." I'm like, "Just because you have a lot of attackers out there doesn't mean that that's an attacking lineup." 'Cause they're not in the right spots, and it looks rank. It's kind of like if you put Eddie and Jesus up front and you had, Saka and Martinelli on the wings in a 4-4-2. Like, it looks good in theory because you're getting more attackers out there, but I don't think it's vibes the way that people thought it was going to. Mbappe was tragic on the day, and, Luis Enrique looked out of his depth. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd want him either. Nashville says Nagelsmann. Rodney says Hansi Flick or Nagelsmann. Um, didn't Nagelsmann just take the Germany job? I mean, I guess you could buy him out of his contract, but, um, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some options out there. It's so hard because it's hard to know who's gonna be a hit. There seems to be more misses than hits these days in terms of recruiting coaches. I think so many teams have went through like this merry-go-round of coaches. Even you look like Bayern and PSG as like good examples of teams that have had multiple coaches just kind of like go on the merry-go-round and it hasn't really worked out. I am a little afraid of the merry-go-round, but I think it's up to the club to be able to get those decisions right. Keenan says, I've heard that bloke Unai Emery over at Villa is pretty good. Don't even get me started. Yo-Yo says, I think the prerequisite for Arsenal manager is an overachiever, not necessarily a winner. I think the prerequisite for Arsenal manager is an overachiever, not necessarily a winner. That's an interesting point. So basically, we don't go for managers that have won anything. We're thinking about guys that overachieve for with what resources that they have. That's interesting. That's kind of like what you go for if you were Brighton. No, I think Brighton would go for a manager that has very little resources but overachieves with what they have. Um, I'm not sure that Arsenal should be having that sort of policy when it comes to looking at managers. Blaze says, I think Xavi Alonso is a good manager, even if he hasn't experienced enough. I'm just afraid to go through this again. Like, we know that managers, look at Potter. Like, I mean, Potter's maybe not the best example, but I do think that managers that come from these smaller clubs tend to struggle when they go to bigger clubs. Um, especially like the hipsters' choices, like that are, oh, look at Leverkusen, look at their triangles, look at all that. Yeah, but double the stress and all of that and see if he can still operate the same. Like, I think it's easier to rebuild a small team with less egos and less resources than a club with loads of resources but big personalities, big egos, and a lots of expectation. And I think that's why rebuilding Manchester United looks really difficult job. Rebuilding Chelsea looks like a really difficult job. And Arsenal's rebuild has been quite difficult because you have to remove so much bullshit first before you can even really get to the football. Then it's the politics and the egos and all of that. And it's just easier to come into a club like Brighton or Leverkusen or even like Spurs, where everybody's kind of like happy, there's no egos, and even if you have less resources, there's just no mess. And I look at some managers and I'm like, "Are you gonna be able to handle this shit?" Because the moment that you get in here, like, the pressure is on. The moment you get in here, the pressure is on. Um, Dan says Kaka. Kaka is another one. The thing is, you have to give me, like, 20 spots because I can name, like, 20 players right now that I love that at any moment in time can be in my top 5. Like, it's so hard to just pick 5, and 2 of them for me had to be women's players because I just absolutely love them. So, once you put Fat Ronaldo and Ronaldinho and you only have one more shot, and I could have put Kaká, I could have put, whatever, but I'm sorry, I loved Michael Essien. I'm sorry, like, I know it's not the popular choice. I should have chose fucking Pirlo or, somebody else that, like, everybody else would have chosen. Nah. Like, I love a good midfielder DM. I love it. Like, I love it. Um, so yeah, sue me. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I just love it. I love it. Blaze says, just why you call him Fat Ronaldo, because that's who he is, Fat Ronaldo. Rodney says Riquelme. Messi, Zidane. Zidane also up there. He's definitely in my top 20 for sure. There's so fucking many. Like, we can just go on for days, really, with how many amazing players that have been around. Like, actually, out of everybody that played for Barcelona and that really, really good Pep side, for me, it was never really like Xavi or Iniesta. I loved Busquets. I loved Busquets. I think he is so disrespected. I don't get it. I'm like, nothing would have happened if he wasn't in there. He was so weird. He was like tall and really skinny. But like when I tell you like a feint, like would send you to the shops, like just with the little drop of the shoulder, just slick. I loved Busquets. Um, Fernando Torres is a player that I always really liked as well. Had some difficult times, but I actually really rated him. Um, there's so many. There's so many because like it's hard because I feel like I'm getting the answers wrong, but it's like there is no wrong answer. There's so many players that you could love that come from different eras and different teams and different vibes and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah. Keenan says, our personnel are def as good as Manchester City. The only area of the pitch where they have more quality is Holland. If Saliba and Gabriel can neutralize him, we should win the game. I disagree. I think obviously we've gotten closer in terms of our quality, but like I do think we are kind of maybe like 80% to as good as City. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think we're like 99% there. We're like probably closer to like 80, 85. Like with Saka and like Martinelli, I think those players are definitely on par. Um, Rice, Partey when he's on it, Odegaard when he's on it. And like obviously I have to say when they're on it because unlike most City players, we have games where our players just don't show up in the big ones. And that's to me the biggest difference between like, Rodri and Partey and like Odegaard and KDB is just the ability to consistently show up even in like the biggest games. Um, and then like at the back, I think Saliba and Gabrielle are definitely getting up there. But do I think that they're just as good as Diaz and Stones? No. Stones isn't going to be in there, but I don't. Kyle Walker is probably one of the best right backs that we've seen in the Premier League. We just have to keep it 100. So I would say we're probably about like 80, 85% of what City is, with experience, consistency, um, everything taken into consideration. Um, but Holland definitely takes them to a completely different stratosphere as well, like you said. So yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, um, Adriel, thank you so much for your question. Says, do you take Prime Arsene as our manager today? Prime Arsene, hell yeah. The one before he went insane? Absolutely. Um, I have like a controversial take on Arsene, um, that I know people probably won't like, but I have 2. And I'll preface all of this by saying that I think Arsene is brilliant. This is also like the same conversations that we have on a daily basis about our players. Like Ramsdale is a very good young talented goalkeeper, but I think we need, like, it's not about Ramsdale being bad and Raya being good. It's about Ramsdale being good and Raya being just maybe even 5% better. And so I think Arsene is, and what like was, a very, very, very brilliant manager. And he underachieved massively for, I think, as good of a manager as he was. He wasn't necessarily always set up for success, but I think ultimately, like when you look at the trophies and what we could have achieved, I do think that missing out on the Champions League really hurts his legacy, because he would have been sitting at the top table had he had won that. That being said, um, I do think he benefited quite a bit from coming in and taking over a side that George Graham had already built, because the combination of Arsene and George Graham and that combination of a team was perfection. It had everything. It had the technical ability, the professionalism, the tactics, and that new way of playing that Arsene was giving them. But, George Graham had the steeliness and the, I hate to be like, the Britishness of, Arsenal, like playing with good defenders that play with heart and play for the badge, and, 1-0 to the Arsenal and those things. And those two combined together gave you the perfect combination for Arsenal. Whereas we went down and Arsene, the team became more Arsene and less coach George Graham. We ended up being Barcelona, but you can't play tiki taka Barcelona ball in the English Premier League. And so um, I do think he really benefited from the team that he inherited, but he made that team better, and then could not replicate the parts that George Graham had left him that were, I think, so foundational to why those teams were so good. Now, Arsene still was brilliant, like brilliant, and did a lot with a little. Like if Arsene had ever been backed with as much money as Mikel Arteta had, and like I just I think he really would have done so much more. Um, and he had limited resources, right? Um, but I also think he stayed too long. And it was a sliding, I think it was a sliding doors moment when you don't sack him in 2015 and then Klopp goes to Liverpool. I think Klopp would have been the perfect manager for us. And it could have been us having the things that Liverpool have, that we deserve, So those are my controversial takes on Arsene. But peak Arsene before we moved to the Emirates, I would take in a heartbeat. Arsene from the Emirates era, maybe I still would take him, but I still don't know if that would be what we need, because Arsene kind of struggled, I thought, to build a team. We're always like 2 players away. And he never, I think he never really like, and maybe this is, goes back to my point about, to make top 4, you have to have a killer attack. Maybe he focused on the attack to make sure that he made it into the top 4, but we were always like 2 defensive signings or 1 striker away from winning the Premier League. And that frustrated me. And I didn't know if that was because he didn't have the resources or because he didn't think it was important. How you don't buy a single DM is insanity to me. How you don't buy like 2 like fantastic center backs that could be in your defense for 10 years. I just don't really understand that. So yeah, I would take Arsene. Prime Arsene for sure. Um, Prime Arsene for sure. Um, but the one that kind of, like, ended, I'd be a little apprehensive about bringing that guy in. But Arsene could coach an attack, that's for sure. If you wanted fun football, you definitely wanted Arsene, right? He knew what he was doing. The Sheikh says if Arsene was given the money, um, Arsenal would have conquered the world. Yeah, he needed some money. He needed some money for sure. Keenan said Arsene didn't understand how to create the balance between physicality and elegance. He needed to buy class center backs and DMs that could make a tackle. And that's the thing. It's like he started off with like Vieira, Gilberto was there, even like Petit. Like he had like there were players there, that were the template for like what you needed in order to like have a foundation to allow your creative players to do their thing. Um, he started off with that. He started off with Adams and guys like that. Like, and then we just completely abandoned it and went for like this Barcelona style, which was fun, but it only really works in La Liga. I think even like Pep realized that is like as he started to get further and further into like Man City, he added physicality and directness into the tiki taka so that he could win. And then he's even gone even further now in order to win the Champions League. So Arsene never really got that. And going through years of not having like a real DM or real center backs was really painful. Very, very, very painful. Y'all know you were there. Um, you were there. You saw it. I saw it. You saw it. We all experienced it. It was really rough. Yeah. It was going through the ringer. Rodney says Mikel Arteta, if he doesn't win the Premier League or the Champions League, he should be sacked. As he had 4 years as a manager and only won the FA, that wasn't even his team. Um, saying if he doesn't win the Premier League or the Champions League, I think is a little like, let's be real. Like, he doesn't have to, like, saying that doesn't take into account that you could come up against Real Madrid in the final of the Champions League and lose. I don't think you can fire a manager that gets into his first Champions League final and loses it. I don't think you can say that a manager has to beat a Manchester City side that's just much better than we are to the Premier League. I think he has to win some sort of silverware and be in and amongst the better teams. I still think that's quite harsh, to be honest, to say like he has to win the Champions League or the Premier League. Um, I think it's harsh, to be honest. But like I said before, I think a domestic trophy would really go a long way for this team and where we are at. Um, I think it's harsh to say after 6 years of being out of the Champions League and his first run in it, he needs to win it. Does that even sound right? No, it doesn't because it's not real, right? Boy says Arsene's coaching of build-up play is unmatched. No manager has made football more artful than him. Yeah, I watched the one of the semifinals, I think, that we were in against Tottenham in the FA Cup, I think. Um, and I mean, it wasn't even that good of a team, but the way that team built up with like Rosicky and Santi and Jack and Arteta, I think was out there too, was just something that like just flowed. Like it was so nice and it wasn't even like the one of the best Arsenal teams, but something that we always had on lock was the build up. You're 100% correct. Like always had build up, always knew how to create space, always knew how to get into the attack. There was no horseshoe of death under Arsene. It was just good shit. It was good stuff. Afsar says Arteta must win a trophy or sacked. I think wanting him to win a domestic trophy or just a trophy in general is probably where we're at. I'm having a hard time connecting to you need to win the Premier League or the Champions League or you're sacked because like that would mean that you're really not taking into account the competition and the fact that like Man City are probably just going to walk the league again because they're just that much better than everyone. Dan says if Arteta loses versus City this weekend, he should be sacked. That don't make no sense either. Crispy says I just wonder of all these people wanting to sack him, will you sack the next manager if he doesn't win the Premier League or the Champions League within 2 years? Um, no, I mean, it depends because I remember people were saying things like when Unai got sacked, like Unai got sacked for less. But I also think the expectation of Unai because he had been a manager for so much longer and he has the experience in the Europa League was to get us back into the Champions League, and he had two very good opportunities to do so. And whether we want to call it this or not, he bottled it. Like he bottled it. He bottled the Europa League final and he also bottled top four. He only had to win one game out of 7 to make it. And we lost like every single game towards the end of the season. Like it was crazy the level of crumble that happened under Unai in his first season. And then the second season, he had us in like 13th place before December. So I think because the whole point of bringing him in was not to rebuild the club, but was to use what we already had, add a couple of things on top of it and get into the Champions League. He failed. Arteta's job was remit was a little bit different. We realized we needed to rebuild, and so we've done that. Now is the next step for him to win a Champions League or win the Premier League. I think that's a little bit like you have to or you're sacked. I think it depends. Like the next manager that comes in, like let's say our Arteta gets sacked after this season, right? And he comes in with 20 years experience, having won trophies before and inherits this side. I do think you expect that manager to kind of like win it right away or, at least challenge. Like I have a hard time connecting with being in the Premier League and knowing that Manchester City are there and feeling like the manager gets sacked if he doesn't win the Premier League or the Champions League. I'm having a hard time connecting with the harshness of that. You saying he has to be in the title race? Absolutely. But yeah, it's a tough one because Arteta's remit was different because of his lack of experience and also the fact that he came in to rebuild the club. But the next manager that comes in, obviously, he will inherit something very good. So what would our expectations be for that manager, especially if they have a lot of experience? So I think that's a good question, a good topic of conversation. The Sheikh says Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup in that order, or get rid of the fraud. I take a Carabao Cup. Crispy says our standards were in the garbage before he came. Let's be real. They only started increasing them again recently. Lucas says his legacy would be better if he left with Henri. Most teams wanted him if he took over Madrid and in France, for example, he would have been more legendary. Fair enough. Keenan says, I think Arteta should be sacked due to his stubbornness. He doesn't look to be growing as a manager and he isn't at the level yet. Here to there says, it's Arteta's suspect decisions in the last 6 months beyond the results of that draw. Yeah, um I do think that the moment that we signed Havertz, I thought Arteta was in trouble just because my feeling was that making such a big, bold decision to like in a position that kind of had to be perfect and get right and take us to the next level, like the way that Arsenal would have, like, I wonder what, like, sidebar, I wonder what our players were thinking when we signed Havertz because clearly, like, they're players, but I'm sure they have watched him over the years and kind of maybe not rated him. I don't know. But like, what kind of message does that send, to the likes of Saka and Saliba, that instead of going out there and buying like a world-class left center mid that, is taking us to the next level after losing Granit Xhaka, who's such a big part of the team that nobody really wanted to go, and replacing him with somebody like this, I do think everybody at the club has to be questioning that decision. And I think, his whole, you know, everything will be kind of like live and die with this decision because you just can't make a decision like that in a season when we're supposed to be going to the next level and just absolutely get it wrong the way that he is. He didn't buy a striker, but he's like really relying on Eddie, who's not good enough. Like there's just some decisions that he's making at a very important period in the club's like progression that are making me feel like I'm watching somebody that's quite naive or somebody that has a big ego. Because any manager that wants to win the Premier League probably doesn't make the decisions that Arteta has made in the summer. They probably do buy Declan Rice, they probably do buy Timber, but they definitely don't spend 70 million on Kai Havertz. Um, and they buy a striker or a left center mid. If we had bought either one of those, we would be in a much better position. And I think left center mid is really hurting our ability to build up, create chances. It's affecting Odegaard. It's affecting the entire left side. It's a lot, and when people are, I don't know why we're not creating chances. I don't know why we don't look the same. I'm just looking at them like, you don't know, really? Like it's so obvious, So some of the decisions that he's making in a very important period in the club's, progression have really made me start to question him a lot more because that is just not a decision that I feel like any top manager would have made. They would have went out there, what they would have gotten, they would have chucked 80 million at Paqueta, they would have chucked 70 million, 60 million at Nunez, they would have given Leicester the 40 million for Madison. That's what they would have done. They would have not done this. Like to need a striker or a left center mid and end up with neither and end up with a player that like just doesn't fit either role really well at all is a very strange decision, and relying so much on somebody that's like, Eddie Nketiah is somebody that you use up until the point where, you make it into the top 4. Like Rob Holding, there are players that you just need to move on from once you get to a certain level, and him being so prominent in the team is very strange to me because I don't think any other manager that's trying to win anything would have Havertz and Nketiah as such important parts of their team. It's a crazy decision to make. It makes me really question him, um, a lot because this is just such an important season for us, and I feel like we're regressing, and he's almost like shooting his own self in the foot. Why? Just buy good players. Like, why would you do that? Um, Boy says, "We are most principled of the big clubs, so no point comparing our hiring and firing practices with other clubs." Philip says, "Unaided had us Unai had us playing the most boring football I've ever seen us play. I had to get up at 3 a.m. Match day watching that crap." I do think Unai revisionism is really funny. I think, Willick revisionism, Guendouzi revisionism was a funny time as well. Like, just because maybe Arteta isn't the right guy or some of the players that we bought haven't been good doesn't mean that those guys were right either. Guendouzi, like, I live for that because I remember so many people coming into my comment section telling me that that guy was good and he was gonna be the next best thing. No, I could have we all knew he wasn't that good. The problem is that you didn't like Arteta, you didn't like the decisions that he was making, so anybody that he got rid of, you decided to back that player and think that he was gonna be the next best thing. Nobody that's left, by the way, has really excelled, by the way. So, maybe you could say Willick, but not even will it consistently. So it's kind of like, I think the decisions ended up being right at the end of the day. But Guendouzi revisionism was so funny. It was so funny because I was like, I can't wait for the next couple of years to go by and we just forget all about this guy. If you were acting like he was the second coming, that guy was so average, it was ridiculous. Boy says Vieira and Fabregas as a midfield pair would have won us the league, even with Squillaci and defense. In defense, I hear that. Nick Shake says Arteta is just a coach, not a manager. Boy says I still believe Squillaci was. I still can't believe Squillaci was ever an Arsenal player. Believe it. We had some bad guys. We had some bad guys in there. Lucas says us signing Havertz is like when Havertz traded for Westbrook. Agecha says, well, Hansi Flick is available. He'd win a Premier League trophy before Arteta if he joined Chelsea or Newcastle right now. Here to there says, I wonder what the dressing room is thinking about Havertz. Look how upset Declan was at the second half of the Spurs game. I mean, as somebody that used to play, obviously you back your teammates, but there do be conversations about players not being good enough or why did we bring this person in or whatever. And I just can't imagine that players that have played with Xhaka for 2 seasons and seen what a good season that he had, see what a leader he was vocally and with his actions are not talking or at least questioning in their own head, what are we doing? Like, there's just no way, you know? But they have to back him, you know? It was a strange decision, you know? Um, Strange decision, so who knows? Crispy says, I can't defend Havertz signing. That's one hill I won't die on, to be fair. And the thing is like the thing is I know all of us would prefer Havertz to work. Like most Arsenal fans, even if, you know, you didn't nobody wanted Havertz, right? There's not a single person on this planet that did. If you're saying that you did, you're lying. But I think most Arsenal fans that really want the best for the club would prefer it to work out with Havertz rather than be right. But also, there's not a lot of signs that it is working, and so when I see people getting mad that people are just calling it out how it is, he's been bad to okay, and that's about it. Um, it's weird because it's just like there's nothing wrong with saying something that is like glaringly obvious, like the guy's not working out, you know. It's just so strange. Earl Lewis says, "Give Havertz a chance. Remember Xhaka and how we treated him prior to him coming good." Yeah, no, I kind of understand that aspect of things, but I don't really think that like what was going on with Granite, like I don't think any sort of abuse is right, you know. So when people were, saying things about Granite's family and things like that, especially after the Crystal Palace incident, I did think that that was wrong. That's a line that you should never cross. But was Granite Xhaka terrible for Arsenal and a liability for a long period of time? I think so. I think so. And so I don't think it's wrong for fans to say, you know what, this guy, he's crap. You know, messed up this game. He's not playing well, and I don't think saying it is a crime. Like, I really think we've blended the line between kind of like normal fan discourse and abuse in order to shame people into not telling the truth, because we don't want any negativity out there about the club, because we're afraid to go back into Arsenal or AFTV and chill or whatever. And so we're trying to like stop little fires here and there by making people feel like they're abusing players by just telling the truth. It's always happened since the beginning of time. Fans have always said whether or not they think a player is good enough or not. And there's nothing wrong with it. I know I get kind of like disappointed when people say bad things about players that I really like, but ultimately they have the right to do so. The line is really drawn at like saying bad things to the like going into their DMs and saying abusive things, like, but I don't really feel like we need to be pretending as though Havertz is playing well when he's not. Um, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that is just so anti being a fan. Like, and it honestly, if it all it takes is for fans to say that Havertz is not playing well, for him to just completely crumble. He's not strong enough to play for Arsenal anyway. Arsenal is a big club. You're going to consistently be criticized and expected to play really well. And so, if all it takes is for fans to tell the truth about how you're playing, for you to not be able to stand up and perform, then you shouldn't be here anyway, quite frankly, because Arsenal is just Xhaka left the club this summer because he was tired of the pressure. Like, Arsenal is not a easy place to go. Like, it's not an easy place to play. So you got to suck it up. Like, you just have to at some point, you know? Um, Adriel says the romance of winning the league or Champions League with Arteta, one of Arsene's last captains, is why I think Arteta hits Arsenal hits differently, and Arteta we trust. Um, Sack Second Soj says it's his fourth season. How much longer does he need? It's not in terms of how much longer he needs. I'm saying that he needs to win trophies. Like, he needs to show that he's taking us to the next step. But do I feel like if he were to win a domestic cup, like let's say he wins the FA Cup or even a Carabao Cup, like it, just because we call it the energy drink all this time, like it's because we don't win it. I do think Arsenal fans are a little bit arrogant when it comes to what kind of trophies they want to win. We're not winning trophies consistently enough to be like hoity-toity about what kind of trophy. I will take the energy drink cup. It is a trophy. It goes in your trophy cabinet. It's not a community shield. It's a real cup. And City have always won it. They've traditionally always won it before they won big things. So I'll take the Carabao Cup. But saying that, if he wins it, like winning a domestic cup, being in a title race and, going out of the Champions League in the quarterfinals, for me, like, that's not a reason to sack Mikel Arteta. It's just not. Being 10 points, 20 points behind, Man City when they win the league, and, you know, being in a top 4 scrap, not winning any trophies, and going out of like the round of 16 or even earlier than that of the Champions League, that is where I'm kind of like, like, that means we haven't moved forward at all. But no, I wouldn't sack Mikel Arteta if you want a Carabao Cup and finish 1 or 2 points behind Manchester City. No, I wouldn't. That's just, I think that's a little bit far for me. Caleb, thank you so much for your super chat. Says completely agree with you on Eddie and Havertz. Just in fact, I agree so much that I'm sending a super chat just to say I agree. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's one of those things where I just feel like it's so obvious that like there's two positions that Arsenal needed to address in the summer. If not both of them, at least one of them. If you had gotten a striker, like a good striker, I think we would be in a much better position. Or if we had, gotten somebody better than Granit Xhaka to actually replace him, we'd be in a really good position right now with, Rice in midfield as well, Partey coming back in, even with Jesus, not being as clinical because our midfield will be creating chances. To have not really addressed either and to have those two players be super prominent in the side, anybody who's asking questions about why we're not as good or why we don't look that great, I think you have your eyes closed. Like it's right there in front of you. Like it's it just is what it is. We could have addressed either one of those properly and been a better team than we were last season, I think. Um, so yeah. Um, let's see. If you got okay, I have more questions here. This is Q&A, you guys. I am going through comments as well, but if you guys want to send in more questions, you guys can. Philip says, Jess, have you heard of Gabriel Mascardo? Super talented 18-year-old DM from Brazil who plays for Corinthians. Barca want him, but Edu can get him to be our fourth Brazilian Gabby. I was just talking in my group chat about this. That guy looks absolutely insane. He looks the business. And one thing that I haven't really seen from the club or from Edu is any sort of like buying younger talent and even like loaning them out or whatever. And, to future proof the team or to have like very young, talented players come through. Um, it's amazing to me how, like, I'm watching Barcelona do it, I'm watching Real Madrid do it, even Chelsea are doing it, and we're just not even thinking about that at all. Like, we don't like, the only player that we bought to, like, kinda do that, weirdly, is Marquinhos, and he was there for a make weight for us to create a relationship between us and Sao Paulo, I think, but, you know, Edu used to work at Corinthians, unless he completely burnt bridges, which I mean, there is some stuff out there about maybe he has, I don't know, but we should be first in line for this kid. If he doesn't, it's hard to convince them to not go to Real Madrid or Barcelona. But if he were to go to Chelsea, I'd be very disappointed because I know that they're really interested in him as well. And so is Manchester City. I'd be disappointed because it's like, when are we going to get a Brazilian wonder kid? Like, this is your vibe. Like, this is your bag, Edu. Like, that's your whole thing is you have Brazilian context. You have no relationships in Europe. Your relationships are in Brazil. So why don't we have Brazilian wonder kids coming through? And people will be screaming at me, Martinelli, but Martinelli was scouted by Francis Cajagal. Almost all of the deal was done before Edu came through. He kind of sealed the deal at the end, but it was really Francis Cajagal. So I don't even really fully give him Martinelli. Like, the fact that only Marquinhos is somebody that we brought through makes no sense to me when there's all this talent out there that we should be getting. We are a self-sustaining model that relies upon young talent building their value in order for us to like either sell them or for them to go through the first team without us having to spend an arm and a leg. And for us to not have like, I don't think we're using our academy well enough, and I definitely don't think we're out there scouting young talent well enough either. The last gem we got was through Raul. Like, Martinelli is a Raul signing. So what are we doing? But he looks the business, this guy here. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get him because it's just not something that we're not doing. We're not buying young talent like that. We're not. So yeah. Earl says, Jess Havertz is not good enough yet. Remember Dennis Bergkamp? He was the same situation when he joined us, but became a legend. Yeah, I hear that. I want to believe he's going to be an Henri Bergkamp. Like, I want to believe that. But we just don't really have the wiggle room to have a player in our team that we spent 60, 70 million on to need an entire season to really like get going. We kind of needed somebody to hit the ground running. Like, also because you don't have Xhaka. If Xhaka had stayed and you had bought Havertz, then it would have been probably a little bit better because you could have just, slow cooked him, not put him like into the line of fire right away and still had your midfield intact. But your midfield is not intact. It's in balance, like it has no balance. And then you brought in this guy and you're telling us to take time and allow him to like get into this position. And it's just kind of like, is this what we needed to do right then? We didn't need to do this. This was a very unnecessary step that we just are forcing for no reason. I think that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like, I understand that we've had players in the past that have been like flops or, have taken time to flops at other clubs or have taken time to adapt to being at Arsenal. But Arteta is that's how comfortable he is in his job, by the way, that he feels confident enough to convince the club to spend 65 million on somebody that flopped at another club to play a position that doesn't necessarily suit him. And Arsenal are going to give it enough time, like give it time to work. That's how safe he is in his job, by the way. So for people that are thinking that he's going to get sacked, he's nowhere near getting sacked. Like there's no way, really. To like no manager under pressure does that. They buy the right player and they get it done, they get it going. He's under no pressure whatsoever. No manager under pressure does this. Ivy says exactly. Edu is letting us down on that front. We need some quality South American players. City got Alvarez for 14 million. We have not tapped into the South American market anywhere near as well as I thought we would. Like our transfer policy is pretty straightforward. I think it's players within the league that are between the ages of like 22 and 25. Like that has kind of become what we're doing, unless it's like, an Odegaard, we got him for 30 million, we got Timber for like 40. But like for the most part, you know, Ben White, Ramsdale, Raya, Rice, um, Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, um, Zinchenko. Our transfer policy is pretty straightforward. Buy within the league, and that's fine. Like I don't mind buying within the league. I'm just more a little bit like, can we be a little bit more? Can we finesse this a little bit? Maybe they feel burnt by Sambi. They spent 20 million on a young player that was supposed to be like the business. He was supposed to be the next Yaya Toure, and he ended up being nothing of the sort and really flopping at Arsenal. So maybe that's why we're kind of like really hell bent on doing like in league signings, but like we need Edu to kind of like work his magic. We're not getting anything like special or like working the market at all. Blaze says, Jess, I get what you said, but the way we ended last season and Arteta had a bad reputation because people always talk about we bottled top four in the title race. We need to win a major trophy to make that statement. Fair enough, but the thing is he's getting sacked then. Like he's not, I don't think Arteta is going to win. Like we can, but at this stage, I don't have a feeling that we're going to win the Champions League or the Premier League. So I don't know. I think that's a little harsh, but I've talked to my friends that are not Arsenal fans, and a lot of them have kind of agreed with me that even though Arteta at some point does need to win a major trophy, just winning some sort of silverware and being in the title race and not going out embarrassingly in the Champions League is a step forward for this Arsenal team. And so I get the aspect of like we need respect, but from a lot of people, Chelsea fans, Man United fans, Liverpool fans that I've spoken to, they're like, he just needs to win a trophy. He just needs to win a trophy with this group. And then you can start building on top of that. For the first trophy to need to be a Champions League or a Premier League, I think that's a little, out of I think that's a little out of whack. But there you go. Getcha says, speaking of young talents, we let Diamande pass us by while he was at Midtjylland. Now he's at Sporting, who will probably sell at 70 million. I mean, Arsene missed out on tons of players like this too, but I hear what you're saying. Like we were linked with him, and he'll cost a lot more now, probably be out of our budget. But yeah, he looks the business, so he's definitely gonna go for a lot of money. That guy, he was really good against us. Funny enough, at the in the Europa League last season. So yeah. T-Pain says, Jess, what are your thoughts on Charlie Patino? Do you think he's capable of playing the left center mid role? Yeah, I do. I do. I think profile wise, yes. Like whether or not he's like, I think playing in the championship will give us a really good indication. Like he's doing really well, but like from a physical standpoint, is he able to play against men? Because the first thing that players that are not as good as you technically are going to do is they're going to test your physicality. And so we know that we've had young players play for us in the past. And like the first thing that happened is somebody two-footed them, to let them know that they were there. And so if Patino can get through this entire season and really look like he can withstand the physical challenges, then absolutely, like, he is a midfielder. And I think that's what we need in that position. I think we need a tempo setter and a high, like, especially if Odegaard is going to play more of this goal scoring role, we really need somebody that's a high volume passer and tempo controller. We need somebody that has creativity, that's not afraid to get on the ball, that's not going to leave us high and dry, and requires Zinchenko to do so much work. So I think he should be a part of the team next season. Not a major part that we need to like rely upon, but somebody that can replace either one of Jorginho or Partey. I'm pretty sure one of them will leave. Not sure who, but one of them will leave in the summer. El Neni will also hopefully go. No offense, but like it's time. And even maybe Emil Smith Rowe won't be there. So there'll be plenty of room to allow somebody like Patino to take some good minutes. And good players will be able to adapt, and good managers will find a way to coach a player and set them up in a way where they're comfortable and confident to play, even though they're young and being exposed to first team football. And you see that with somebody like Rico Lewis at Manchester City. I think Pep has done a good job bringing him through. He started in big games before. He's only 18 years old, but he doesn't look like he's being set up to fail. And I think Arteta has kind of not been that great at bringing young players through and like being able to get them to like feel confident and comfortable playing. And so that's something that I feel like he needs to be able to do. Like, we have a great academy, and I don't think we're in a position where we can waste that talent just because we can't figure out a way to get them in the team, because we want to rely on the likes of Cedric and Rob Holding. Like, we have such a good academy. Like, I want to see more of these players brought through, but the manager has to know what they're doing. And so far, you know, we haven't really seen Arteta go into the academy and bring out one or two of them and be able to use them in any sort of way. I found it strange that Sago Jr. was the one that he chose to play against Brentford. I know MLS and Noweri were injured, but why not Cozier Dewberry to play the Saka role? It was, yeah. So Patino, yes. For me, it's a yes for me. But not like to play like a big role. If you guys want to call in, you guys still can. I see like Lay says, oh no, I missed the phone in. You can still call in. The link is pinned in the chat. So you guys will pop up backstage here and you guys can pop in. Like, the thing is like, there's there's no pressure. Like, we can still talk like this, or you guys can pop in and actually like be on screen. I'm okay with either. I just wanted to open up the opportunities for both of you guys, or for any way that you guys want to be able to come out here and like say your piece, whether it's on camera or not. Just wanted to open it up for you guys. Um, Anton Dunn says Arteta is only good at using his first 11 and potentially being a decent coach, but nothing else. People really are not feeling Arteta. That's crazy. Actually, it's not crazy. I knew that this would happen this season. After we didn't win the title and everybody was like trying to be like happy about it or okay with it, I knew that early on in the season, if we didn't look great, everybody's true feelings would come out, because there's no indication either way that this is the right guy to take us to where we want to be at either way. Like, I don't think it's set in stone that he's not, but I also don't think that it's set in stone that he is. And so this season is very important because, like, we all knew what happened. We had a big opportunity to win the league. We should have won the league last season. We didn't. Now other teams are getting better. There's a lot of pressure on us, and recruitment was not right. And so we got recruitment spot on last summer. We got Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko in, and just those two signings alone took us to another stratosphere. So we know that you can make one or two signings and it change all your fortunes. And we didn't do it. I think we're unfortunate with the Timber injury, but just bringing in a left center mid or striker that was better than what we had would have done that for us. And we didn't do it. And so now the pressure is there and people are really showing like how they truly feel about things. And I knew it would be like this. All it took was one loss. Like, even when we drew against Fulham, people were really upset. And I'm like, Do you think Liverpool fans get upset when they draw a game? No, they don't get to the point where it's meltdown on the timeline. Why? Because they trust the manager and they know that they're doing the right things. And yeah, I knew it. I knew it. The Run says Arteta has lost the patience of the fan base. That's what happens when you don't take advantage of the best opportunity that you've had to win the league in years. Like, that's what happens. The pressure really mounts, and I never thought that that was going to go away easily because now we started the season and we know it's going to be more difficult this time around. It just is. Even if Manchester City are off still, because we have not closed the gap on them, it's still going to be just as difficult. We have to take points off of them, and we will still drop more points than they will this season. Like, you just had to do it last season, and that will haunt a lot of people for a long time, I think. Um, Blaze says, Jess, do you think this season is more important for Arteta in his career because of the pressure and the way that we ended last season? Yes, I do. I just think that you win the league last season and you were just we're having completely different conversations, obviously, because you will have ended a, what, 19-20 year drought. You will have showed that you can win major trophies, which is the remit for an Arsenal manager. Like, you have to be able to win them at some stage. And you would have, I think, solidified Saliba and Saka for the next 6 years. Because that's in the back of my mind as well, is if we're not winning the major trophies, we will lose our best players. If we're not winning trophies, period, we won't be able to keep our best players. So, yeah, the pressure is definitely on because it's the way that it happened as well. It's not like we came up behind Manchester City and we just barely didn't make it and we missed out by a point. We were ahead for the entire season. And then as soon as the pressure got too much, we fell away badly, like to the point where I think they won the league with 85 points or something like that. Like, it was, yeah, like we didn't even push them to like high 90s. So yeah, it's the way that it happened. It's the fact that it was probably our best opportunity, and we know that those opportunities don't repeat themselves over and over again. Like, when Liverpool had the chance in 2019, they took it. Man City were off by just 5%, and Liverpool took it over. And by midway through the season, it was done already. The moment that we lost the league for me was when we lost to them at home in December or February, I think it was. When we lost to them, then I knew it was over because we encouraged them. Like, that was a big game for them. I think if we beat them at home, we go on to feel like we can do anything. But they knew if they beat us there that we would not beat them away from home. And all they had to do was stay close enough and we would make a mistake. If we beat them in February, I think we win the league. But we couldn't. And that was before Saliba was injured, by the way. We lost it then. So yeah, that's just what it is. TF Payne says, I can't wait for Arteta to unleash Partey, Rice, Odegaard. Like, that's a top 3 midfield in the world apart from City and Madrid. Can't think of another one that has a better midfield. Why do you think Arteta didn't use that one from the beginning, though? Like, he used it in the Community Shield, but once we got into the season, he abandoned it and went for right back Partey, even against Nottingham Forest when Timber was there. So it wasn't because Timber was out that he used it. It was something that he was wanted to do that never really made sense. Like, he had Gabriel available. So he could have done something different, but he chose to go with Partey at right back. Why do you think that happened? Because I still would love to know if he truly does think that our best chance of winning a game is doing a box midfield with Partey at right back. He cannot think that that's right. Maybe he was doing it because of Zinchenko's injury, but the fact that he didn't go with Partey, Odegaard, and Rice from the beginning, and he's only going to use it for big games, is a little bit like, you know, does he view that as his best midfield or not? I don't think he does. So yeah, the Sheikh says it's not just the results when it comes to Arteta, it's the change in how we are playing this season compared to last season. Why change things if it ain't broke? Um, somebody sent a picture. I don't know why. Um, Phillips said he wanted an extra attacker versus inferior opposition. Yeah, I can hear that. I hear that. Still feels a little extra. You know, is Partey, Odegaard, and Rice not enough in midfield by itself? Um, are we the kind of team that maybe it's because he knows we're going to come up against deep blocks, and maybe that's the only way that we can unlock them is if we have this extra attacker. So I can kind of understand that a little bit. Um, it's a little making it a little bit more difficult. Yogo says Arteta signed Timber, Rice, and Kai. I think he was ready to move on from Zinchenko and Party. Yeah, I don't think that Arteta views Partey as a part of his best midfield. I've told you guys from the beginning that I do kind of feel like he's making a point, like spending 100 million on a DM and going out there and getting a goalkeeper and getting rid of Rob Holding. I do think that you can look at those actions and say where he feels like we lost the league last season, which was not having adequate backup for Saliba beyond Tommy. Maybe also using Timber as the inverted option because Zinchenko was being exposed. Partey had loss and injuries in the run-in. Ramsdale, mistakes and head loss during the run-in. And those are the choices that he made. That still doesn't account for Kai, though. It still doesn't account for Kai, though. Why did he feel like he needed to do that? So yeah, Keenan says, just speaking of revisionism, I said Havertz wouldn't work this summer, and we must play Rice, Partey, Odegaard midfield if we want to win silverware. And you in the chat said I was crazy. Not necessarily. I think what I said was that I thought I understood what he was doing with Havertz, and we need to give it a chance. I was okay with us bringing in Rice because I don't think Partey can be relied upon, and I'm actually do think that Partey, Rice, and Odegaard is our best chance of a good midfield now, but there's still other options that you can try that don't actually include Havertz. So it's not really revisionism. It's like I never said that I don't think that Rice, Partey, and Odegaard would work. What I was saying was that when people were really going at me about where Rice would play, I knew that he was going to play DM and that we had replaced Partey with Rice. And I know you were somebody that didn't believe me, where you were somebody that was saying that no, Rice is bought for the 8 position and this is the midfield that we're going to play. So basically, you're saying that that's our best midfield, but you also said that Rice was going to play the 8, which has not been true at all. It's actually been exactly what I said it was. And I understand what Arteta is trying to do with having Havertz do this off the ball role and, come into the box, and then Zinchenko or Timber was going to invert or whatever. But I was still right. And just because now probably our best midfield is Odegaard, Rice, and Partey, it still doesn't account for the fact that everybody was telling me that I was deluded for saying that Rice had replaced Partey, which is true. He has. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we're talking about two different things. Rice was never going to be the 8. He was always coming in to play the 6. So yeah. Let's see. Here to there says what's startling is Havertz was number 1 in XG underperformed last year. Why did Arteta think he could Kai become foundational GA producer? And of course, Eddie was number 2 in XG underperformed to top it off. The weird thing about that is it's like he loves players that aren't clinical and obvious goal scorers. It's strange. I don't know. It's like he doesn't like speed, he doesn't like directness, he doesn't like clinical finishing. He continues to bring in people and play people that don't have that in their locker. And then we wonder why we're not clinical. Jesus was fine because he took us to the next level technically and could play the false 9, but we were always going to have to bring in somebody to make up for the goals that he doesn't score or continue to create loads of chances so that when he misses the inevitable 3, we still get 2, right? And so, yeah, we have a bunch of players in our team that aren't necessarily that clinical, that are underperforming their XG. We've added Kai to it. and he's also playing a position that doesn't suit him and also has low confidence. So there's a lot of questions around the Kai thing. It'll just never really work. Like it will never really no, it's not that it will never really work. It's I will never truly understand why this is the choice that we made. I can see what he's trying to do and that he wanted to have like this box midfield situation, with Timber and, Rice, and then Havertz was going to be there next to Odegaard, but he was going to play like this invisible role. But it hasn't really worked out that way. And it hasn't really the thing is Havertz just needs to impose himself more. I just find him to be very much so hiding within the game. And I think even if you're going to play this off the ball role, you need to make dynamic runs. An off the ball role doesn't necessarily mean that you just stand behind your marker. You have to make dynamic runs. You have to get into the box. You have to demand the ball still. And there's lots of footage of him in the Lens game, just kind of standing behind his marker and not really making the runs. And it's just strange, like, all of it is strange. Yo-Yo says, "How we start the season isn't necessarily the way we're going to finish it." It isn't, but, I still think that there's some glaring things that, like, kinda need to be addressed that what my fear is with Arteta is always that he's gonna double down on it because he wants to show that he's right instead of making the necessary changes and not waiting until we're so far off the pace that he's forced to make the change. Like, basically, we don't wanna be in a Willian situation where he doubled down on Willian for the whole first half of the season. He gave him all the way till December. It was clear from the beginning that he wasn't working out. And then we ended up going to the kids and it was too late. We finished 8th. So we can't wait until December to remove Havertz from a position that's not really working out for him. He needs to go to his best midfield and stabilize things and not be reactive. He just seems quite slow to make the change. So we're not necessarily going to be this bad in terms of our chance creation and finishing the entire season. But if we continue on with this midfield, I think we will kind of stay around here. Um, so yeah. TF Payne says if Partey starts on Sunday, Arsenal are going to be at their best, and it will probably be like our best performance so far. If he starts Partey, he keeps us ticking, and he's our most important player to me. Um, yeah, I don't I think he was our most important player until Rice came in. I felt quite comfortable and confident while he's been out since Rice has been in. So I think that was true years before, but not necessarily true now. Our most important player right now is Bukayo Saka. If he doesn't play, we have no answer. There's nobody analogous in the team to him. But in terms of like playing him on Sunday, we may be back to our best if Partey is up to speed and he's fit enough. But do I believe that Arteta is going to go in with Partey, Rice, and Odegaard? No. I think he's going to play the same midfield and start Eddie. That's what I think. I don't think he's quite ready to admit that this hasn't worked at all. Leahy says, what will be interesting, though, is if Arteta buys Zubamendi. It appears Arteta is still interested in him. What are your thoughts on that? If he buys Zubamendi, then we'll play a double pivot or something. I would not be I think 4-2-3-1 is the perfect formation. I think it gives you everything that you need. I know it's classic, and I know some people are like, "Oh, it's not edgy enough." But playing with a double pivot in a traditional number 10, I think that's gonna come back in style. Like, stuff always comes back in style. I think number 10s are gonna come back in, and to be honest, I think our team is more set up to play a 4-2-3-1 anyway. I think we have so many number 10s. Everybody that we've bought is a number 10 or a number 6. So, would I be upset if we played a Declan Rice Zubamendi double pivot? No, I wouldn't. I would actually love it, and I would enjoy it, and I think I deserve it. So I really like Zubamendi. I actually think he'd be a very good DM for us. But if we did that, that would be really interesting. Because that would mean that Rice would be playing a different role than he is now. Yeah, I like Zubamendi. I don't know if that ship has sailed or not, but I like him. He's good. Chosen One says, Jess, do you actually think Saka and Saliba could leave Arsenal in the future? Yeah. Of course. I think we've seen it with Arsenal before. Good players will leave if you're not winning or you don't look serious. And so Saka is one of the best right wingers he's one of the best wingers in the world, and he will continue to be so. I don't see that trajectory changing anytime soon. I just see him getting better and better and better. And so the big teams that win things are gonna be calling. You best believe Manchester City are still, you know, lurking about. Liverpool are also gonna need a right winger soon. When Salah leaves, then you have like the abroad, situation where I don't think Real Madrid would be opposed to having a player like Bukayo Saka in their team. Bayern will always be interested. They're gonna lose Sane soon. So yeah, I do think like Bukayo Saka could leave us. And Saliba, he's not Hale End. Of course, he can leave. He will leave if he's not winning the big. Like, we have two players in our team that could potentially be best in their position in the next 2 or 3 years. So of course they can leave, and that's why Arsenal have to get the best out of what they have now. Um, and what is the cost of keeping a manager that may not ever get to that level? The cost is maybe losing some of those players that you will never be able to replace. Like, we're never gonna look at how much we got William Saliba for like 29 million. How much do you think of William Saliba would cost now? And will we be able to attract that type of player? um, or the next Saka. So, yeah, of course they can leave. We've seen it before. Players are just as loyal to clubs as they are to themselves. Like, there's no reason for a player to be super loyal to a club because clubs are not that loyal to you. They will replace you in a second, get rid of you, try to move you on in a second. So they need to take their own like careers into their own hands, and if they want to win things in a short career, then they need to make the right decisions. And so, yeah, I don't think Saka and Saliba are like with us forever. I think some players are. Like, I think basically we have Odegaard and Rice and Ben White's peak years. Um, they like Ben White will sign a long enough contract, and I think Odegaard and Declan Rice's contracts are basically like, you have me for my peak years, I'm committed. But Saliba and Saka are younger than these two, and they have another big move in them if this doesn't work out. So it's one to watch. I think we have Martinelli as well. I get the feeling he's quite committed. Um, and he feels very like indebted almost to Arsenal for taking a chance on him. But Saka and Saliba are the ones that stand out to me as like they could go and do other things and they would be well within their right. Like, it's a very short career that you have. And so you have to do the business. Nashville says Saliba will be at Madrid in 3 seasons, win or lose. I hear you on that too. Saliba, if he continues to do what he's doing, will end up playing for Real Madrid. Like, he's that good. Um, and I've already accepted that as well. Like, that's why I want to see Saliba win things with us, because I don't know if I'd be like feeling like he's putting a dagger in our back if he goes and plays for a team that most players dream about playing for in their lifetime. So most players at some stage in their career want to play for either Barcelona or Real Madrid. So we have to get the most out of Saliba while we can, because the less that we do and the if we don't win trophies, the longer that happens, the more likely they are to knock on our door like tomorrow. So yeah, I agree with you there. I've already accepted that. He's not Hale End, like, and Saliba has his whole life ahead of him. He can be whatever he wants to be. So yeah, I'm not that like vexed about Saliba. Saka would really be painful because he's the face, and you know he's our Bukayo, but that's how the cookie crumbles. Boy says Saliba is Gvardiol money. Exactly. Adriel asked, do you think we can keep a clean sheet this weekend? What's your score prediction? I'm feeling pretentious. So 3-0 to the Arsenal. No, we're definitely conceding. We're not good enough at home not to concede against a really good team in Manchester City. I think, I said 2-1 Arsenal. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet just based on like how we are at home and how good Manchester City are. They may not Holland may not be in form, but Alvarez is definitely in form, and so the likelihood of them scoring a goal is very, very high. Even if we defend well, we'll find a way to give them a goal. Like that's just how we are. Um, so I'm going to one Arsenal. Um, but we have to keep the score close. If we let them score 2 goals in the first half, it's just finished. Like it's just done. Here to there says spot on, our CB and wing pairs are irreplaceable. In addition to Odegaard, we have to capitalize and win big now. Philip says we need to sign Diamande style guy to be ready in a few years for the possibility that Saliba goes. I agree with that. And I do think that's why we're looking at Diamande as well, because as much as Kivior and Ben White and Tomiyasu can all play center back, they're still not the same as Saliba and Gabriel to play at the halfway line and clean up the way that they do. So there needs to be another center back that comes in that's the same physicality, height, strength, speed, and ball playing ability as Gabriel and Saliba. I think that's why we're looking at Diamande. It would be very smart for us to do so. Um, for real. Richard says the big Q, if Arteta would allow Kai Havertz to leave, maybe for free. I can't even start thinking about that right now. Like, he needs to work now. Like, if we allow him to leave on a free, that would be we have Kai's peak years as well. Like, I don't really put him in the category because right now he's not really clicking, but we have Kai's peak years as well. So, to allow him to leave for free after did he sign like a 6-year deal or something like that? That would be insanity. But we don't tend to know when to sell, when to move on from a player and how to extract value. So, I mean, I guess there's a chance that he could leave for free. That would be awful. Boy says, matter of fact, Arteta is not trusting his own signings is one of the most annoying things about him. He's trusting this ship like we are City and we can afford fluff transfers like I'm not gonna be able to say this. Eloquim Mangala. Yeah, like the thing is I personally feel like the reason why we don't trust certain players and we don't rate certain players in our team is not because they're not talented, is because Arteta doesn't trust them and he doesn't put them in positions to thrive. I think he puts them in positions that make them look bad, or he puts them in games that don't allow them to ease themselves in, or with a very rotated lineup. I think that's kind of what happened with Vieira. Started off well, fell off because he lost a lot of confidence, and Arteta just kept putting him in situations where he's not going to play well. You can't put Vieira in the same midfield as Jorginho and Xhaka. You can't, because they don't have enough physicality and they don't have enough legs for us to like have enough possession for Vieira to just sit in the pocket. Like if Vieira can't sit in the pocket, he's not going to be useful to us. I feel like ESR is quite similar in that way. So Arteta, instead of playing like a double pivot with Vieira, that would also give, Jorginho a better, platform. He plays them like as if it's Rice and Partey and Odegaard, and you can't play those players in the exact same way. Kivior is somebody that should be playing in games like we played against Lens. He should be playing against PSV, but he's not getting those minutes, and so we don't trust him, and we don't think he's good because Arteta doesn't trust him. But I don't think that means that these players are no good. I think Jorginho, Vieira, Kivior, Tomiyasu, these are all really good squad players that can add a lot of value to the team. ESR as well, but they're not trusted. And when they do play, they're played in positions that do not suit them. And it just doesn't work out that way. Like I think we've learned that Tomiyasu can't play on the right. We've learned that Tomiyasu can't play on the right. We've also learned that he's probably better at center back. But Arteta continuously plays him at right back. And every time he plays there, he has a mare. Vieira can't play him on the right wing and expect him to play like Saka. You just can't. So we end up saying, oh, Vieira's crap, Tomiyasu's crap, Kivior's crap, but really, they're not. They're not. We know Tomiyasu's not crap. Look how he plays for his international team. We know he's not crap. We saw him play center back for us. We know he's not crap. We've seen Kivior play. We know he's not shit. This is a man that started in the World Cup for Poland. He's not crap. Vieira is like one of the highly rated like young players coming out of Portugal. We know he's not shit. We're not using them properly and we're not using them enough. The manager not trusting them, for me, is not enough for me to think that the player's not talented, because I've seen Arteta not trust talented players before. There's a reason why, and I think it's more about him than it is those players. So every single season, we start to say things like, we don't have enough depth, we don't have enough good players on the bench, everybody on the bench is shit. That's why Arteta doesn't trust them. No, Arteta needs to do better, I think. Are we really willing to sit there and say like ESR, Vieira, Kivior, Tomiyasu, these guys are bums? Like we know they're not. We know they're not. We know Jorginho's not a bum. We don't use them properly. We don't use them properly. Um, they're not like they're not bums. But if you put Vieira on the right wing and you say do what Saka's doing, he's not gonna look good. He's not gonna look good. Like, come on now. You put Emil Smith Rowe at left 8 and he doesn't have players behind him that can win those duels for him. Like, you have to know your players. Like, ESR is not going to get that much better defensively at 23 years old, 22, 23 years old. He's not going to get that much better defensively. So if you're going to have him in your team, you need to play him as a number 10. You need to play him as a number 10 with a double pivot. I would love to see a game with Jorginho, Declan Rice, and ESR in the pocket. I would love to see it. I bet you he'd thrive, but you'll never see it because Arteta is like wedded to the 4-3-3 with one single pivot and two tens. And that just does not suit certain players. I'm not buying it. Like, I went into the season saying we have good depth. So I need to see Arteta use it, make players look better, let players develop. Like, that's what I need to see. But already, this loss against Lons, I'm hearing people say we don't got enough squad depth. No, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Like, I'm not buying it this season. You guys told me that this last season. It just, no. Because I'm sorry. Do you Aston Villa has better depth than us? Does Brighton have better depth than us? Like, Manchester United doesn't have better depth than us. Like, Liverpool doesn't have that great of depth either, but they seem to be able to get the business done. That's because the manager allows the players to play minutes when they're supposed to and puts them in positions where they can actually play well. I think it's more of an Arteta problem, and these are his players. So not trusting them is still an Arteta problem. It's not on the players anymore. I'm not buying it. Like, I'm sorry. Dan says ESR, Trossard, and Tommy are only good subs, and the rest are championship level. That's Kivior is not championship level. A championship level player cannot start in the World Cup. I'm sorry. Like, that's just not true. Like, Vieira is not championship level either. We've convinced ourselves that those players are not good enough because Arteta hasn't put them in good positions to thrive. Period. Sorry. It's not true. But I think we're so busy trying to figure out a reason why it's not on the manager, and it is. Like, other team, like, I want people to go back and look at the teams that, like, the players that they had behind the starting 11 for Liverpool when they were winning the league or when they were in contention for the league. Oxlade-Chamberlain, let's be serious. Let's be serious. Naby Keita, let's be serious. Minamino, let's be serious. DJ Lovren, let's be serious. Like, let's be real. Origi, y'all. Origi. These are the guys that were coming in for the main dudes. They only had their best 11 like 3 times when they won the league. Like, you don't need world-class players, 2 in every single position, to just be able to win a European match away comfortably. You don't. It's a fallacy. It's a lie. We have good squad depth, but half the time those players don't play in the positions that they're good at. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Millen says Jorginho is class, but Tomiyasu is defensively great, and Kedia and Vieira are just objectively shit. Not true. Especially, I don't know how people watch the first couple of games of the season of Vieira this season and they're still saying that he's crap. It's just something that you guys have been saying since last season, and you're not updating your hard drive. Like, Vieira's not crap. He needs to play in positions where he can thrive. That's up to the manager. If you think players can just, like, there's only some players in the world that no matter what team you put them in, no matter who you have them around, they're going to look exactly the same. It's just, but Vieira's played well this season, but the times that he hasn't played well, look who he's played with and look what positions he was put in. Let's be serious. Boarding Pass says Arsenal missed out on buying Danny Drinkwater from Chelsea. Could have won the league for them. Nashville says That is insane, Keenan. So what are you guys saying there? I don't even see Keenan's thing anymore. Let's see. Um, Name a game that Kivior did play well in. Well, he played well against Brentford the other day, and he also played well against Newcastle last season. He also played well against Chelsea last season. Like basically, once he started starting last season, he played well. So again, like some people, they'll say anything like, "You've been saying that Kiwior is not good because he played one bad game against Sporting, and then he's been pretty good since then, but you haven't seen him much." But we don't update our hard drive because we just start saying the same things like, Kiwior ain't been bad for us. He just hasn't played very many minutes. He just has not played very many minutes. Ivy said facts. Arteta needs to do better. Stop using players from the bench out of position. Everybody out of position as well. Like in general, we need to stop putting square pegs in round holes and just put players in positions where they can thrive. Here to there says Kiwior is actually a real player, and Georgie has been solid basically every game but Spurs for us. Kiwior is very highly rated and a very, very, very good player. He's being asked to play left back as well, and he's more of a center back. And not everybody adapts to playing right back the way that Ben White has, or playing fullback from a center back position. So I'm like a little bit, you know, I don't know what games people have been watching where they think objectively Kiwior, or Tomiyasu or Vieira are crap. I think mostly we don't use our bench very well. They don't play enough. They don't play consistently. They don't play in positions where they will play well. They play in heavily rotated sides with no connections in them. Like putting Tomiyasu and Vieira on the same side is suicide. You're not going to get anything out of either one of those players. You're not. So I don't know. I think it's more on the manager than anything else. And when we started the season, we thought we had good depth. And now all of a sudden we don't because we lost a game. Arteta needs to use the bench better. He needs to use the bench better. Here to there says Kiwior size, pace. He's a solid defender. Vieira is a real talent. It was evident last year, but Eddie Pep would never give him the minutes and faith Arteta has. Kurt says Vieira is similar to Odegaard because he can get bullied. Odegaard has figured out how to avoid and make space. Vieira is still learning. That's the ups and downs. If you don't get runs of games, how are you supposed to learn how to do what you're supposed to do? Like the one thing that Pep does really well is he gives players runs of games. He gives them like 4 or 5 games on the bounce, and then you can build up. If you know you're going to play 4 or 5 games no matter what, then you can kind of relax and, do your business. But as a player, if you know that this is the only 30 minutes that you're going to get for the next couple weeks, because the other guy is going to start every single game, then not only are you tense and a little bit stressed out because you know this is all you're going to have, but you're also demotivated because you know that there's no chance of you starting anyway because you're not really competing for a position. So there's no motivation really to play. I mean, as a player, you have to find motivation. But if I'm ESR, if I'm Reece Nelson, if I'm Vieira, I'm Tommy, I'm Kiwior, I'm finding it difficult to motivate myself knowing that I'm going to get these 30 minutes or these 60 minutes to show what I can do when the game is either already lost or already won. But the next game, I'm not going to start because the manager doesn't trust his bench at all. So Pep does a really good job of giving players runs of games. I think that's the best way to do things. Like there has to be 3 or 4 games that ESR gets and it's not interrupted at all. There has to be, I just don't understand like why it never happens. You know, the Sheikh says, I do not understand Arteta playing Vieira as a right wing. I felt sorry for him. And everybody was like, oh, Vieira's just crap. And I'm just like, I mean, if you put a player in a position that they're not suited for, what do you expect? Like, that makes sense. But yeah. Millen says Vieira played all UEFA Europa League games last season. Who played well in Europa League last season for Arsenal? If you can name one player that played well in every single game, because basically the same team played every single game in Europa League last season. If you can name somebody that played well in Europa League for Arsenal last season, I'll give you $100 because nobody played well. So everybody harped and focused on Vieira. Tierney was awful in Europa League. Jorginho was terrible in Europa League as well. Like even our starters did not play well in Europa League. Like, you can't just rotate 7 players and expect them to play well without ever playing with each other before. Like, so I don't know what you thought those players were supposed to do. Now, the cheat code for that is if you were to play Hale End players together, because they've played with each other since they were kids. And for a lot of time, like we got away with that when Arsene was here, we would play like 6 or 7, academy kids. They play with each other before. But you think you're just gonna get guys that don't play with each other at all, and just throw them together once every couple of weeks and they're just gonna look great together? I don't know. But if you can find anybody that played well in Europa League for us consistently, I'll give you $100 because you can't find one. You focus on Vieira, but nobody was good in that competition. No one. The starters, their levels dropped if they played with that team. And objectively, everybody was just a lot worse than they usually are. Tommy, Vieira, Holding was awful. Jorginho's bad. Like, I don't know what you guys expect. You gotta do something else. Nashville says, "Will it work? I don't know, but that's what I think Arteta will do." Let's see what you're saying. Nashville says, "I don't think he plays Zinchenko this weekend." Nashville says Partey is going to invert from the right. Um, I don't think Zinchenko should play. Um, I said that before. I just think it's playing straight into Manchester City's hands. Here to there says, in our system, our defenders have to be athletic. Gabriel and Saliba are tasked with covering immense amounts of space. You have to be a great athlete to do that. I agree. And we have some, like Kivior and Tommy are also athletic too. Um, let's see what you guys are saying. But yeah, it's been about 2 hours though. We've been talking for a while. Let's see. Anton Dunn says Arteta is not good for certain players' careers. I'm having a hard time with the idea that, like, players that like, you can do 7 or 8 changes with guys that haven't played in weeks, and they're just meant to be really, really good, and also, if they're not playing in their like, Jorginho has always played it with another player next to him that wins the duels, so when he played well for Chelsea, he played with Conte. Arteta doesn't put him next to Conte. He puts him in a midfield with Granit Xhaka and Vieira and says, play well, win the game. And people wonder why he doesn't look great because he's not being played in a way that suits him. Jorginho needs a double pivot. Vieira needs to play in a 10 role. He needs to be in the pockets. ESR needs to be in the pockets. Trossard needs to play central, so he needs somebody, either the left center mid or the left back needs to overlap for him to play on the wing because he's not good. He's not a 1v1 winger. You're not playing him in a position that suits him. You're asking Eddie and Nketiah to come deep and link play. He's not good at that. He's a poacher. That's kind of what, like, all he's gonna be. And you're asking Tommy and Kivior, natural center backs, to learn how to play fullback. There's a lot of players in this team, like even Tierney. One of the biggest problems with Tierney was that once we changed the way that we played, inverting never suited him. But Arteta never changed the way that we played to suit Tierney or allowed him to overlap, which is what he's best at. So he had to go. So I don't know how people can continuously watch this theme of, we're going to play a 4-3-3 this way with one fullback inverted and a single pivot, two tens, and two inverted wingers. No matter who we have, that's how we're playing, and feel like they can blame the players for not being able to play in ways that suit them and not look at the manager. These players are not crap. They're not playing in positions that suit them. Square pegs, round holes, not changing the system to suit the players. And you either need to have two world-class players that play exactly like the players that they're going to replace, or you need to be able to modify your tactics to suit the guys that you have. Because asking Trossard and Vieira to play like Martinelli and Saka is just a recipe for disaster. And that's not to say that they don't do their own. They don't need to up their levels too. Like, sometimes their touches are not great, but I just don't see how you can see that and be like, yeah, that's on them. I don't see. The only time that, Havertz and Trossard played well together on the left-hand side was against Barcelona, and Havertz was overlapping and playing in the left half space with Trossard and connecting with Jesus. Against Lens, none of that happened. We were so narrow. Like, I didn't see Havertz. I think I saw Havertz do that once. Like, we just don't play in ways that suit our players. Like, our system is very much set up for the starting 11 and not for the guys that are coming in. So I don't know. I don't know how else to suit it. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Um, so yeah, Arlila says, I agree with this. Tommy is a beast at center back, not fullback. Nashville says he plays Partey, White, Saliba, Tommy, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, Jesus, Eddie, Saka. Anton Dunn says, perfect, Jess. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing. Like, I'm seeing players being played out of position, and that's it. Boy says Tierney was told to invert, which is dumb management from Arteta. I mean, everybody's being asked to do things that doesn't really suit them. And if you're a player and you're asked to do something that doesn't really suit your natural, like, you can learn how to do things, of course, but some players are just not suited for certain things. Like, if you're a natural fullback or a center back, you're not going to be great at inverting. You're not, unless you're a special player like Stones, because you're not used to being played in like those small areas. Like, you're not used to being like, as a fullback, you need to deal with the sideline being next to you all the time. So as a center back, you're not used to that. So you already have somebody blocking you off on this side. The angles are not the same. So it's not everybody's Ben White. Like, not everybody's gonna be able to figure that out. So those are my thoughts on that. But you guys, I really enjoyed this Q&A. I was planning on doing like an hour and 30 minutes, but we went over a little bit because it's Friday and like, who cares? Like, we just wanted to chit chat a little bit the before the game on Sunday in an informal way. And I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this. This is kind of like old school, like what I used to do back in the day, like 3 years ago when I first started. Like I would just like start the show and we would just kind of like talk to each other. Those are the most fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel on your way out, and make sure you guys put on your notifications for the watch along pre-match vibe start an hour before the game. So make sure you set your notification for that. I will see you guys unless something happens on Sunday. So enjoy your weekend and I'll see you guys on Sunday. And love you guys. See you soon. You guys are the best.